Welcome to the Trumpet of the last few days. I am Stanley Farrar.
And I'm Robert Farrar.
And I'm Joshua Farrar.
And as we come to the times in which madness reigns supreme throughout the world, and simple common logic is sucked out of people's brains, and they take and wander through the streets like mad zombies, wondering when the COVID will hit. We turn to the CDC, who can't decide what they want to believe.
It's
Well,
okay, they're motivated by science. Whatever that means.
and you guys jumped right in the topics. I thought we were going to make excuses about how we haven't had an episode in a few days. Well, in a few weeks. Like 2 or 3 weeks, actually.
I was hoping they wouldn't notice. It's the holidays, and you're busy, and so is Robert.
Yeah. Still expected, like, token excuses.
No, we're not. We don't do our token hires, not even for excuses.
Now, as you take and you think about it, the CDC has lowered the length of time in which you can be quarantined. Once you test positive, but they're assuming that everybody that catches COVID, whether they have symptoms or not, are going to go to the hospital.
Well, funny thing about that is there's actually a hospital that recently was overwhelmed by asymptomatic infected people.
Was
yes.
it?
Yes. They
Where?
I think it was in Texas somewhere, but I can't remember exactly. And it's just like these people are going to the ER of all places with no symptoms.
So why are you here? Because I don't feel bad.
Well, the virus, so I know I'm gonna die.
See, they had to go in because the lack of symptoms was just whelming.
Just whelming. It wasn't overwhelming, wasn't underwhelming, it was just whelming.
Fauci came out and said that, oh, no, it shouldn't have to take quarantine longer than 3 days. Assuming you take and wear a mask afterward everywhere, 24 hours a day for 5 days.
Well,
after you've quit having symptoms.
at this point, Fauci has been discredited so much that there's really no point in listening to his advice anymore. So,
Yeah, we're just waiting on the public policy to finally. But
he also stated that, well, you shouldn't have to quarantine at all as long as you've got the booster.
he wants those kickbacks. You gotta get those big pharma kickbacks.
Well, it's been proven that the big pharma's been sending you money. So, yeah, exactly it.
well, to be honest, they haven't done a proper quarantine in this entire process. Quarantine, by definition,
No,
should be 40 days.
that's what the word means. Well, thankfully, you're not sick that long. Of course, you're still dealing with a virus that has an exceptionally low fatality rate.
And dropping.
Yeah. Although practiced members of the game Plague Inc. will remember that this is the basic strategy to spread it as far as possible before upping the fatality.
Always one of the problems of Plague Inc. is that You don't. Once a virus mutates, it has to completely respread. The entire virus doesn't mutate at the same time.
The thing about it is they're finding that the Omicron it has the symptoms similar to a cold, and people have died with it, but they can't. But they aren't willing to come out and say that they died from it.
You
Well,
know,
didn't you know that every death for the past 2 years has been COVID related?
the funny thing about the new variant and how closely related to the cold it is, it's so similar to a cold that scientists in Britain have decided, you know what, it's a cold.
Well,
Uh,
colds are fatal.
They can be fatal.
Can be,
Uh, I'd directly say they are,
depending on the person.
as long as you happen to be dehydrated. That's how they kill you.
Normally, they tend to kill you by the things you get afterward because of them.
Well, yeah, like pneumonia.
Yeah.
But if a cold kills you by itself, it's because it dehydrated you out and you couldn't replenish your fluids.
But with the Biden administration throwing up its hands, saying, you know what, the states have to handle this now, there is no federal solution. Which is hilarious because he said he was gonna shut down the coronavirus. And now he's doing the sensible thing and putting it up to the states.
Colorado took and lifted their restrictions on for COVID. The governor there stated that keeping things locked down because a few people haven't been vaccinated makes no sense. If they have chosen to die,
See,
And you know,
that's a sensible response. A bit strong wording, but a sensible response.
yeah,
those aren't. It isn't an exact quote, but it's basically what he
that
said.
it was the basic gist of what he said. He said if you're not vaccinated at this point, that's on you.
But they're still all spreading the lie that you don't get vaccinated, you're going to die.
Yeah. But it looks like the political winds are starting to shift in favor of getting over this nonsense.
Now, if you are a high risk person and you get the wrong variant, you have a possibility of dying, whether you're vaccinated or not. A celebrity recently did a poll on their Twitter feed about asking people if they would vaccinate their 5 to 11-year-olds now that it's been approved. And she was horrified to find out the vast majority of the people who answered her poll on Twitter would not vaccinate their children 5 to 11.
Well, there's really no point, especially not now. Is
No.
all right. So none of us particularly believe in macroevolution, but using evolution as an argument for the sake of an argument. Um, Evolutionarily speaking, according to the theory, creatures will evolve to survive. Viruses, very much like creatures, it is not in their best interest to kill off the host.
Yeah, that is
So
true.
it is more inclined to survive the less lethal it is, but the easier it spreads. Kinda like a cold. Now, of
Yes.
course, we don't even believe in evolution, but that if you were to
But
take
there
it from that
is
We
argument,
don't believe.
but there is still the survival factor that can't be ignored. There's
well,
a
yeah,
reason why Ebola has survived to this day. It's because it's very, very spreadable.
yeah,
And
But it's
otherwise, if it
also
wasn't spreadable, it
very
would have fizzled
killable.
out
It kills
a
people
long
like
time
mad.
ago.
yeah. A virus that is more
It
lethal
kills
than it
people
is
like mad, though.
infective cannot survive and will kill itself off.
Yeah.
A virus that is more infective than it is lethal, oh, those things stick around. They stick around for a long,
Yeah.
long time.
And viruses that can mutate
Look at the flu.
easily stick around for a long, long time.
Exactly like the flu.
Hence why the original coronavirus has never been snuffed out, nor has the rhinovirus or any other of the common colds.
Well, it's also why influenza. Uh, they make a new shot for it every year, and the one this year they say isn't working. Yeah, trust the science. Except for the fact you don't know which mutation you're going to deal with.
See, the problem with the whole trusting the science thing is so many so often they are calling on quote unquote experts that they don't even know why they're called experts or in what field they're experts
Yes.
for or who exactly told them that person was an expert.
Well, okay.
Well, you still go on.
Wait, so Fauci stated that when they criticize him, what they're really doing is criticizing science. Well, I argue that when they say trust the science, what they really mean is trust them.
Yeah, but a lot of people seem to forget that science isn't a done deal. Science is a process. It is what we know is constantly changing as more information comes in.
And a lot of that's
The
disputed
cult of
information anyway.
the cult of science began in the 1800s,
Arguably in the 1700s.
and as they take and slap the label science on it, suddenly you aren't supposed to be able to argue with it anymore. Even if all the facts and all the stats disagree, you can't argue with it. It's like what we've said already may get this episode banned from YouTube.
Actually, I found out why our previous episodes haven't been. They
Why?
they only scan the first 5 minutes for content that may break their guidelines. So for long running series like this one, if it's not in the first 5 minutes and it's not in the last 5 minutes, they won't notice it unless it's specifically flagged. And because no one watches our shows on YouTube, no one's gonna flag it.
So you're saying my sermon got flagged?
Probably.
Because the comment that they banned it for was not in the first 5 or the last 5 minutes.
Yeah. But your sermons also get a lot more views than this show.
But it sure got pulled quick.
And by the statistics,
And
none of the views we actually get on YouTube watch the episodes all the way through. So they're not gonna flag anything.
according to the statistics, everything I said in that sermon was right.
Yeah.
According to the science, yeah.
The science proved me right. Even the scientific studies said I was right. And yet YouTube took and pulled me for giving out misleading information.
Well,
But they are in the business of propagating lies.
yeah.
They have to take and bow down to their oligarchic overlords and spread the lies that Google and Alphabet tell them to. It wasn't like it was when I first joined YouTube, where we actually had the freedom to take and post whatever we chose to post, and then we would answer for it ourselves. Not you, and YouTube wouldn't have a say in the matter.
Yeah.
Now, YouTube has a say in the matter, and you have to answer for it yourself.
Kinda actually, in legal terms, should surrender their protections.
The protections
They should,
incentivize it.
yes.
Section 230 incentivizes that sort of
The
behavior.
where it should be that Section 230 should ban that kind of behavior. It incentivizes it instead.
Yeah.
They don't get taxed and they can't be sued because they censor their their content creators, as they call them, and prevent them from spreading any truth that goes against the party line. If you're a communist or a Democrat, you can say anything you want to say. It doesn't matter how defamatory.
Not
But
anything.
if you are telling the truth,
They can't say anything they want to say.
pretty much anything.
They can't say anything against the party line. So they can't say anything.
Well, that's true. They can't say,
Anything is
but they
is a big
wouldn't
word.
anyway. But as long as they're sticking to the party line, they've got that freedom. While anybody else that brings out the truth, they're in danger of being censored. And yes, I'm on my soapbox against you.
Well, we are.
But I'm the only one of the three of us who has actually experienced that firsthand.
You're also the only one of the three of us who've posted anything on YouTube.
You post to YouTube. You just do it on my channel.
Which is effectively you posting them. Yes, I might be the one doing the actual legwork, but it's your account that's held accountable.
That's true.
Just like how you were the one who were technically flagged on your account, it is your
Yes,
account
I
that posts
was.
these things.
But it wasn't anything you posted that I got flagged on. It was something I posted. It was a sermon.
True.
And you can't get anything that's more within the realm of the freedom of speech and the First Amendment than a sermon that's preached in a church service, and yet they censored a church service. And yet we know that they are an active agent of the totalitarian government that is currently running the show. You can't say it's not a totalitarian government when they push for lockdowns.
I wasn't arguing with you.
So, under my definition, even Trump was a totalitarian government.
He never pushed for lockdowns.
That it is true. Well, he
said it.
he didn't
He
fight
said it was
against them, though.
up to the states.
Yes, yes. These vaccine mandates that Biden's pushing for, and Fauci can't decide whether he supports or opposes.
It all depends on who's paying him.
One interview he supports them, one interview he opposes them.
But it's the vaccines that will very likely keep Trump from being the contender in the next election. Because he will not quit his endorsement of the vaccines.
Well, to be fair, I don't think that's really an issue for him. Because, yes, he endorsed the vaccines. He fought for their creation. He fought really hard to have them created. But he never mandated them. And that's key.
No, he never mandated them, but his base hates the vaccines. And his base wants him to let it go.
His base doesn't really hate the vaccine. The most vocal of his base, maybe. But the base itself is just against mandating it. Not the existence of it.
The more evidence that's been coming out that's been saying that those vaccines are poison has been turning off a lot of his base.
Yeah, but none of that really matters as long as he doesn't mandate them.
He can still argue that he didn't that he enabled the creation of the vaccines. He did not stipulate
I never said he did. What I said is that it's turning off his base, and that is a fact.
Oh, your base, they now belong to us. Man, no one's gonna get that joke.
Oh, now DeSantis probably can beat Trump right now.
And he might should.
Well, let's be honest. Trump probably shouldn't get a second term at this point. He's far too old for the role.
I don't know, Reagan.
Even Reagan wasn't as old as he is now.
I know, but I still can't forget that line. I will not let my opponent's youth and inexperience get in the way of this race.
One of the biggest problems with Biden is the fact that he is too old for the role. He is mentally degraded. And Trump isn't very much younger than him.
But Trump isn't mentally degrading. There's no indication of that. However, Trump has shown his ego, and that is what's likely going to get in the way of the race.
Well, let's be honest.
Yes, he had an ego before, but now he's letting it get in the way of connecting with his base, and that's how you lose a race.
Well, let's face it. Trump always had an ego.
Yeah.
And it always got in the way whenever somebody stepped on it. And I know he would not be happy with what a lot of people who know him have said when it comes to his choices and how he picks people to work for him when it comes to the White House.
Especially
picked
characters
all
like Fauci.
The wrong people. Everybody he put in position were swamp creatures.
The thing from the Black Lagoon.
Well,
Let's face it, they would be more competent.
for the guy who made his career saying you're fired, he didn't seem to know how to say that to his people.
That was reality TV, though. Reality TV is not an indication of reality.
Well, I mean, he's an executive. He should know how to fire people.
That's just it. Executives don't have to fire people, they can just leave it to HR.
Then maybe he needed to establish an HR department. Because his picks were terrible.
Actually, believe it or not, he had an HR department, but that HR department was the same HR department that was in place when Obama was in there, and was the same one in place when Bush was in there, and the same one that was there when Clinton was in office.
That entire group needs to be fired at this point.
Well, a bunch of them need to be.
Yeah,
Whoever becomes president next needs to go in and clean house.
yeah. The best thing they could do is go in and just fire the lot, fire all of them. Nobody that is currently holding a job within the executive branch retains their job. Everybody's gone. In all levels. That means all the way down to the the local IRS agent to the agents of the FBI. Those corrupt monstrosities. Fire them all. Fire the CIA. Fire them all. Justice Department, hit the bricks. And then go through and only take and rehire enough people to fill 1/100th of the position.
Wouldn't
Or
say
less.
1/100th.
Because you have to make up the.
That seems a bit low to me. And that's just coming from my experience of working undermanned.
Well, remember that there's a lot of agencies that are under the executive branch that only do busy work. They don't actually have a job.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing to cut them down to size, but 1/100th, that's a lot. And
Well, there are a lot of agencies you don't want doing anything, like the FBI, CIA.
and having been in a job where I had to do the work of 5 people, that's not fun.
No. Well, basically speaking, the environmental department gone, the education department gone, the uh, IRS gone. It's kind of hard to take and raise taxes on people when you don't have anybody to collect them.
It's one way to do it.
And see, that's all under his control. He can't control the taxes that the Congress puts down, but he can take and go through and state, okay, I will fire the people that are going to enforce that law. You go through and you fire the FBI, fire the CIA. You go through and you fire NASA. There's no need for NASA. We have independent companies that can do the same job without taking in the government doing it.
So, thinking of NASA, right? We've been shooting things into space for a long time now. And every single one of these things we shoot into space is made up of metal and and fuel. But not once have we brought anything back. The planet is finite. How many more things can we shoot into space before we're not capable of doing it anymore if we're not getting a return?
Well, they found out recently that a theory that had been postulated back in the 70s and 80s actually is viable. And
Mining
that
the moon?
theory goes that if you that you end up with a chain reaction of satellites a satellite being destroyed and it causes a chain reaction and will fill the whole upper atmosphere with debris to where you can't launch anything through it and you can't put any more satellites up.
Okay. So
Russia just about
we've got a hard cap
Russia
before.
just about triggered that.
So we've got a hard cap before we run out of materials. So at least there's that.
But Russia destroyed a satellite in the upper atmosphere, and it cascaded, but it was low enough it didn't cause the massive chain reaction that they're afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
If it had been just a little higher, you and I wouldn't be talking right now.
Actually, we would be. Well, actually, maybe not. You're on satellite internet, aren't you?
Yes,
Okay. So yeah, we probably wouldn't be. But discounting the fact that you guys are on satellite, if you were on, say, tower-based internet, tower-based Wi-Fi, we still could be because the internet uses wires, not satellites.
it uses wires only to a point. It broadcasts it up to satellites eventually.
Most
It no longer uses wires to go transatlantic.
it does actually. In fact, they recently repaired and replaced a lot of those because a ship accidentally cut some. That was like 3 or 4 years back.
Those were mostly phone lines, though,
Yep. And
and
because
telegraph lines.
because the internet traditionally travels on phone lines, they took the opportunity to update the cabling to thick fiber optic cabling for the internet transatlantic because
And
satellite internet's too slow.
do you know what the line of sight? You know what the line of sight range is for 5G?
Line of sight range
Yes,
depends on where
there's
you
a
are.
limit on how far it can see.
Depends on where you are.
True 5G if under perfect conditions is only 500 feet, not 500, 900 feet.
Man, that's really low.
Yep, extremely high frequency, very short range.
So, for reference for most people, traditional line of sight is practically infinite, right? Unless you count the curvature of the Earth. The curvature of the Earth, when you're at sea, so you've got no barriers. Your typical tower will make your electronic line of sight about 30 nautical miles. A nautical mile is longer than your standard mile. And your standard mile is longer than 900 feet.
A lot longer than I know.
5,280 feet.
I was talking to a technician for Verizon, and he stated that for 5G to work properly, they have to put in sending and receiving units on poles and buildings at such a regular pace to keep them within 900 feet of each other
So,
That's
thinking about it,
obnoxious.
to keep 5G working.
5G must be an extremely high frequency. Actually, above EHF.
Literally.
Sorry, above extremely high frequency. Um, so let's see.
Microwaving it, basically.
Do what? Yeah, it would have to be.
Microwave.
It would have to be higher than microwave. Because
Yeah.
the higher the frequency you go for RF or radio frequencies, the shorter your range is. Generally, because of the way basically it is traveling more through the air, so therefore it's hitting more resistance and it peters out into white noise sooner. That's why for voice or for sound, low frequency noises, deep noises, travel much further than high frequency noises. There are certain exceptions when you involve resonant frequencies through certain mediums, but as a general rule, your low frequencies will always travel farther. So to be that short of a range, man, what's the frequency range higher than EHF? In fact, what's the frequency range higher than that?
I'm not.
Is UHF not higher than EHF?
No, that's a lot lower. So you've got
It's a lot lower.
you've got medium frequency MF, right? That's where your standard radio plays on. You've got HF, which
Ham radio.
which is where ham radios are. You've got VHF.
And they can talk around the world.
Yeah. You've got VHF, where most like walkie-talkies and your radio sets in trucks. That's where that is. That's also where your radios for distress signals on boats is, in the civilian sector. You've got UHF, which is higher than that, and UHF is where UHF is a bit of a weird one because most civilians aren't able to use UHF for most purposes.
Except TV.
Except not a TV doesn't even use UHF anymore. It used to. But once they went digital, it's no longer the case. Above UHF is SHF. That's where TV usually sits now. Or at least the lower ranges of it. You've got EHF higher than that. That's where you've got satellite TV and the internet. And that's also where you've got satellite phone lines. Higher than that, I don't even know the terminology anymore. I've heard it before, but I don't have it off the top of my head.
Then.
I can tell you its frequency range.
Like I said, you're into microwave then.
Yeah, they just generally call it microwave frequencies at that point. And most of those are used for things like radar. And even radar, like, let's go with a semi-commercial radar, right? Your standard surface search radar that is used to identify whether or not you've got ships around you and whether or not there's low-flying aircraft that can impede with your ship. This is also used for like air traffic control positions if it's set up in a slightly different thing. It's normally electronically capped at around 100 nautical miles, and it can go farther. And that's microwave right there. You would have to go even higher, like several degrees higher, to get it to where its range is so short to be 5G. And the amount of power you would need to push it if its range is that short is insane. In fact, its power requirements is...
Of course, that may be one reason why it's that short.
Yeah, that's probably exactly why it's that short. Is power. Because they're probably running on... well, they're running off the grid. But considering the grid is, what? Depending on where you are, up to
the majority of the units,
220 volts. It's got plenty of...
The majority of the units are running off of cell phones. So
but the cell phones
able to be generated off of that battery.
That's true. But I was thinking more of towers, which act more like relays.
Yes, but you have to. But the limit comes down to the broadcasting and receiving ability of the phone.
I would say the limit is both, as you can sort of cheese the towers, right? Because the towers you can just up their sensitivity until they can pick up something a lot lower than what they can broadcast, and then just have to broadcast to each other from like the maximum of their distance, which would make it to where you're actually limited by... well, yeah, you're limited by the cell phone's individual transmit range, but you're limited more on the sensitivity of the individual of the relays. It's sort of a circular limitation.
But if the relays are set up on telephone poles, they got to be small.
Well, 5G relays aren't actually all that small. They're pretty big, actually.
They say the ones in town they're using, and they're putting on buildings and on telephone poles.
Okay, those ones would have to be extremely small. But then they're probably connected to sort of like a hub, where they've got a much larger relay that is on a much larger power source that can transmit to a larger network. Got sort of like semi-webs built around everywhere. That's how I would build it. But then you'd have to worry about the topography of your individual city. Or ideally, you would
But you take like out.
You would set up a network of smaller 5G receivers, and then use fiber optics to connect them to your major transmitter, and then use that as a hub. That would actually save you a lot of money and power, because you wouldn't your smaller network hubs wouldn't have to actually connect to each other so much as just be ears. That would also save you a lot of construction costs on building a bunch of mini transmitters. But then that would put the burden of your transmission on your cell phone, which has an even smaller power supply. So, yeah, we're back to being limited by the cell phone. So the battery is probably your major restrictive factor there. You're working at higher than microwave frequencies. Much higher than microwave frequencies.
Of course, that's also one reason they have a kind of fake 5G out in the country rather than true 5G.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're having to piggyback the signals.
Yeah.
And run them through the 4G and 3G radio range in order to take and simulate 5G,
Well, most places don't even have
which you're
5G.
hitting a slower signal.
Most places still don't have 5G.
No, most people.
4G is currently the standard, which is hilarious considering I remember when 3G was the standard, as do all of us. But
And now they're doing away with 3G entirely.
and I haven't done much research into LTE. I don't remember what that even stands for.
Oh, I could have told you a few days ago, but I can't tell you now. But I can tell you that is 4G. LTE is still 4G.
LTE is like an addition to 4G. It's like an update on it. Like you can have 4G without having 4G LTE, but you can't have 4G LTE
It's like
without
we have
having 4G.
It's like we have LTE here,
Mm-hmm.
out here, but we can't get 5G.
Which, once again, not surprising. That's with that range restriction, it's pretty prohibitive. Only your most modern phones would be able to even transmit at that frequency. Because most of them
We can get
most of them are
we
already
can do
operating at
5G as far as the office.
most of them are already operating at 4G, and 4G is still microwave frequencies, but not nearly as high as it would have to be for 5G. Then again, the reason why they'd go to 5G over 4G is because they increased bandwidth, because you've got more frequency to play with. We've gone totally off topic. Uh, we've gone out of.
We've geeked them out.
We've geeked him out. We've
That's what happens when you.
for the first time ever we've stepped out of Robert's specialty and into mine. Well,
That
not
wasn't the
first
first
time
time ever.
Not the first time ever, but one of the rare types that we actually stepped into what my job is. This is
And what my job used to be.
Yeah, so you two can talk, and I just have to sit here and just like. I understand some of what you're saying, some of it.
well, there is a reason why you basically have to go through the military equivalent of a college course to do my job.
When I was in training for your job, we actually had college professors come in and teach it.
Well, they decided to cut on funds and just use former military for me. Which, I guess it worked. I'm good at my job. But it is, I don't know. It's frustrating that they always seem to cut costs where, at the spots that need the funding most, and splurge on
Yeah.
the areas that need it the least.
So, are you going to be? Oh, I'll ask you this after we disconnect.
We can wrap up here if you like.
It's a question that.
We have just shy of 50 minutes worth of content already.
Well, Robert, you want to close us out?
What was that? You broke up.
He asked
Do
if
you
you want
wanna-
to close it out.
Do you want to close us out?
You can close this out.
Well, if you enjoyed our program today, feel free to take and share and expand and expound your feelings with others and with us. And we encourage you to comment, share, invite your friends, relatives, associates, neighbors, and arch enemies to share the program as well. Especially if you know it will irritate them, because we always get the most interesting replies from those we irritate. Yes, we are open to
Were we getting replies?
dealing.
We haven't comments in a while that I've known of.
Not in a long time. It's been a while. Likes and dislikes have pretty much been the only thing we've been getting. So, feel free to subscribe and join us next time here on the Trumpet of the Last Few Days.